each of you to tell us what do you think is the one biggest issue in this election. So, why should the voters of Caulfield vote for you? And one issue, please, the most important one for you. Why don't we start with the incumbent, David?
Thanks, Julie. And could I just recognise the traditional custodians which allowing me to pay my respects to those past and present, and also recognise Rachel, Nomi and Lior, and also, if I could, Ashley and Michael that aren't here, but also are running in this election. Good question to start. So, what I think I bring is firstly somebody that has a record, has fought very hard for our community, has always stood up for our community when it counts, and the proof is in the pudding. You know what you're going to get. You know you've got somebody that will be in the corner of every single person that lives in Caulfield and everybody that lives in this state. That's what I believe. Community has always been first and central to me, and it's something that I will always bring. In terms of what's important to this election, we know that we're in a health crisis. We know that we've got to fix our hospital system. That's a given. And I know you only asked me for one thing.
One thing, please.
So look, health needs to be fixed. There's no question there. But I will say, health and confidence in our state. We're in desperate need of a reset. We've had enough. We need confidence, opportunity, and get the state back to where it needs to be.
To encourage all the candidates, please to keep your answers concise. We don't want a superficial conversation tonight, but nor do we want to get bogged down. There's a lot of things to discuss in a big agenda. Do start going on, I will have to intervene. Thanks, David. Lior, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Julie. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners and also welcome all the candidates and wish everyone well. I think the one issue for this election and the one decision that the audience needs to make tonight and the voters of Caulfield is who's the most likely person on this stage to get real outcomes for this community. And I think what we can all agree is the person who's most likely to get real outcomes for this community is the person who will be representing this community in a government. Now, polls aren't always right, but what the polls have been telling us consistently for the better part of the year is that the high likelihood is that the Andrews government will be re-elected. And in order to get outcomes that are important to our community, childcare, healthcare, infrastructure, you want to have someone who's at the table, you want to have someone who's got direct line of sight with the decision makers. So I think that's the issue that the voters of Caulfield should be considering. Who is the most likely to be at the table and affect real outcomes for this community?
Good evening. It's exciting to be here with 500 of my nearest and dearest who are never going to let me forget what I say this evening, even 20 years from now. So I'll name it. It's a bit scary to be here. But I'll also say this is a question of integrity. This election, you've seen the major parties. You've seen what happens when you have a 55-seat majority in a lower house. You ran through any legislation you have, and you can do it because you can, because you're in power. And you can also see on the other side an ineffective opposition. 2 years of lockdown in Victoria, mental health crisis. Integrity speaks to the major parties who have seen what they can do. In May, Australians chucked in the towel. As recently as 1999, people voted for the major parties, 90% of all votes. It's plateauing and crashing to 67% for a reason. We want politics done differently, cleanly. People that answer to the electorate and are not going to be beholden to parties.
Rachel.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Rachel. I'd like to also extend my acknowledgement to the traditional owners of land, Lior, and to all fabulous candidates. Picking one issue is extremely challenging, and I think probably entirely unsurprisingly, as a Greens candidate, if I had to pick one, purely that everything else slowly starts to become irrelevant if we don't address it, it is in fact climate change. And to that effect, what I offer is a progressive crossbench with a proven track record on tackling climate change. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of Caulfield, we will. But before we do that, I think I have to address the issue that Elsie raised. And that is the breaking news from Israel overnight. It does seem clear, although it will take a while for the precise results to be counted, that Bibi Netanyahu's bloc is likely to have won this election and won it quite decisively. It's Bibi Netanyahu who in fact is still on trial for corruption charges. It is likely that his coalition, his ruling coalition, will include the religious Zionism party, in which one individual, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is a convicted supporter of the openly racist Meir Kahane. David, starting with you, the Liberal Party has consistently touted its strong pro-Israel credentials. It's very sort of consciously been outbidding the Labor Party on that, and that's not hard after Penny Wall's recent Jerusalem debacle. But we're now looking, are we not, at a very different state of affairs. This news from Israel, doesn't it suggest that the parameters of the debate are about to change, and we're now looking at the possibility of a serious schism between Israel and its diaspora communities. What does that do to your position and your policies?
Right, start with the questions. Thanks, Julie. Excellent. Look, I would say this. I think that the first thing that I won't do is interfere and criticise Israel and Israel's politics. There's plenty of Israelis to do that. And there is no question that Israel and the political system is unstable, election after election. But at the end of the day, Israel still exists regardless of what government's in power. It's been very good in terms of being the only democracy in the Middle East that gets stuff done. And there's been lots of attack on Israel over a number of years. And what Israel desperately needs are friends that stick with them through thick and thin. And that's where the Liberal Party has always been. The Liberal Party will be the last party that tells Israel where they should put their capital. As far as we're concerned, we've always been consistent as Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and it always will be, according to the Liberal Party. I think that what Penny Wong did and the Labor Party did in the last few weeks or thereabouts was appalling. No one was talking about this. It wasn't an issue, and it became an issue. It was gaslighting at its finest. The fact that we had the Labor Party raise the issue about Jerusalem and then blame the Liberal Party in terms of its support for Israel. And all that does, it promotes hate and anti-Semitism locally. That's what it does. The students have to clean up the mess. We've got to clean up the mess. And it's the last thing that our community needs or deserves. Now, I will say this in finishing. To do this on a high holiday, when there were no community leaders being able to stand up for the community, is appalling. And I had to make a decision to actually do that because we had mainstream media and there was no one that was available to be able to make a call. Now, it's great that we have Jewish people putting their hand up. For the first time, all Jews running for Caulfield. And I commend that. I think that is fantastic. I really do. Because no matter what happens, we're going to have a Jewish representative in Caulfield. But I will say this. It is important for Jewish candidates and representatives to stand up when it counts. And there was a lot of silence during this time, and I will obviously hear where the other candidates sit on this, but I think people need to stand up when it counts.
Okay, David, you are the incumbent, and I've given you a bit of indulgence there. The question was, I know you're all expecting me to ask about Jerusalem. In my view, that's probably superseded now by the likelihood of the new Israeli government, which has been described as most likely the most right-wing in Israel's history, and as Yossi said in his introduction, there are Zionist leaders here who are seriously concerned about the future of Israeli democracy. If you could please keep your answers on that theme. Nomi, I imagine that you have been thinking about this deeply. Yeah.
I think that at a state parliament level, you don't have a huge foreign policy role to play, but as a strong supporter of Israel and someone who loves Israel and who has 3 siblings living there and pretty good Hebrew, if I'm allowed to say that, I don't have a problem in advocating for Israel when it's necessary, and we know that it crosses over very quickly from legitimate criticism of Israel into anti-Semitism, but it's okay amongst friends to let your friends know that some positions are unacceptable. So, at a state parliament level, other than calling out any sort of BDS motions, anti-Semitism, making sure there would be good legislation to protect against any vilification, I'm not sure what the role would be.
Rachel, would you like to go next?
Thank you. It's a really great question, and I want to preface my answer by saying I'm no expert on peace in the Middle East, on the history of the region. There's a lot going on here that consumes my attention, so I just want to preface that. Look, I'm critical of and concerned for any rise of right-wing government here or anywhere in the world. We're critical of it when we see it in other parts of the world. We're critical when we see it in China. We're being very critical of it in Iran on all ends of the political spectrum very recently. So I'm not quite sure why the same cannot be said of the rise of the far right in Israel. And I say that as someone who also has a strong affinity with Israel, who has been there, who really loves going there, who has family there, and for them I am concerned for the rise of the far right, but not any more or any less than the rise of the far right here or elsewhere in the world, because for the same reasons Nomi said, it's simply not the jurisdiction of the state government of Victoria to intervene and resolve peace in the Middle East. That said, however, and I'll be brief, I'm aware that every time the conflict escalates, we see a spike in anti-Semitism in the diaspora, many of which are here, of course, in Caulfield, in this room, on this panel. And that is in the remit of the state government, and that is in the remit of any of us prospective candidates, and that is a topic I take exceptionally seriously. And we have a strong position on anti-racism and anti-vilification laws that I would like to see go further and harder in Parliament to protect diaspora. Thank you.
I should say that, well, of course, foreign policy is the remit of the federal government. I believe, isn't it correct, David, that Matthew Guy has a promise on the table that if the Liberal Party wins government, they will open a Victorian business office in Jerusalem. Is that right?
Look, that was something we promised at the last election.
Yeah.
We haven't made comments about this election. I personally would love to see that, but it is not a commitment that we've had right now. I think a trade office would be great in Jerusalem for a whole range of different things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
You answered the question.
Okay, thanks. Lior, if you could please address first the question of the Israeli elections, and if you want to briefly deal with Jerusalem, go ahead.
seems like we've been over a lot in respect to this question. So look, the election results haven't been finalised, and I think that that's important. And let's all take a deep breath here for 1 second. We'll see over the coming days what happens in Israel in terms of the election results. I think you agree with the name of Lior Harel. I've got a strong connection to Israel. My southern Southwick, Zichronon Livracha, were there when the state was established. So I care very deeply about Israel, as I think we all do. And I think Israel and Israelis are like family. You love your family, but don't we know it? Sometimes you also fight with your family, right? And just because occasionally you disagree, it doesn't mean that that love goes away. So I think that, we can have mature conversations as proud Zionists, which we all are, which I certainly am, where we can say, look, we love you, but there are certain values and certain expectations that we can have, and we're going to find a constructive way to tell you. So look, on Jerusalem, I'm going to be brief. I will give David a slight history lesson that the Liberal position on Jerusalem was the same as the Labor position on Jerusalem until a by-election in Wentworth, so it's not entirely true to say that Liberals always have supported the capital in Jerusalem. But look, I was very disappointed with the federal government's decision on Jerusalem. Very disappointed. It wasn't the decision that I would have made. I think that a sovereign state has the right to choose its own capital. That's my position as the Labor Party candidate. But everyone here, perhaps with the exception of David, has also agreed that this is a state election, right? We're fighting for real outcomes for Caulfield on the ground. We want to talk about anti-Semitism. Yesterday I stood with the Premier and we pledged $900,000, you can see Justin Kagan there, the Community Security Group, to help fight anti-Semitism. Again, having a voice in government can get those achievements, and that's what we're here to talk about.
Thank you. All right, so let's get local. And let's talk about yet another unprecedented event. It involves Mount Scopus College, my alma mater, and I think that of at least 2 other candidates, Mount Scopus College has for years been rigorously pursuing its ambitions to shift its Burwood campus to the Caulfield Hospital site. And now the school's top brass, including its principal, is threatening to explicitly endorse one of you candidates and has asked each of you to reveal your position on what they call project generation and what steps you might take to make it happen. They put you, I believe, on a week's deadline that has now expired. So, David, starting with you again, you have campaigned very heavily for the redevelopment and refurbishment of Caulfield Hospital. Tell me, did you comply with Scopus's ultimatum? Did you get back to them within a week?
Look, I get back to everybody. For me, this is really, really important. And I totally understand that Mount Scopus and the Jewish community would love to see the home of the school, of the largest Jewish day school in Caulfield. Absolutely, I totally get that. But there has to be a process, and it all starts with that hospital site remaining a hospital site first and foremost before you look at anything else. We're in the middle of a health crisis, and the last thing anyone would want to see is a hospital closed down for a Jewish private day school. That's the last thing. Now, we've committed $550 million to make that happen. So, 100 years I'll get there.
What did you say then?
This is what I said. I'm giving you my response. Okay. Absolutely, almost word for word.
Yeah.
So we've committed to a hospital number 1. Then after that, in terms of what excess land will be left over, there needs to be an open, transparent process involving all parties to look what could be possible for that land. Now, the only caveat that I have said is I will never want to see what is public open space being turned over to private development. And we've committed to mandated height levels and a whole range of things. We can't take Crown land and turn it into private overdevelopment. What I have said is that we should look at it for potentially three things, and that is health, because it always has been health, education, and that could be open to a whole range of things, including a public school, and thirdly, open space, because Glenara has the lowest amount of open space in any municipality. But that's a discussion once we get the hospital sorted, and that's the commitment that I've given. And that's the end of the day. As Nomi said, and I absolutely agree, people want integrity in politics, not side deals.
Okay.
I'm not signing any side deals, and that's what I put on the table.
Okay, so Lior, David said no side deals. What did you say to the school?
Well, my response to the principal was a lot shorter than David's. We're not sure how to pack that all into one letter.
I'll send it to you.
Please do it. What I said to the principal in a much more concise version than David was not actually dissimilar to part of what he said, which is there are many stakeholders who are interested in that site. I understand, as a parent of two young children who are outspoken students, the desire to bring the school home to Caulfield, but there are lots of conversations that need to happen, and there's a lot of work that needs to happen before we can consider if that is feasible. I have committed to having those conversations, and we'll see where those conversations lead, but there's been no firm commitment to do anything other than have some conversations and consider stakeholder interests.
Okay. Rachel, would you like to take it away?
Thank you. I actually didn't have time to respond, given the short deadline, and also given the absolute lack of any actual clear request other than unequivocal support. There wasn't a dollar amount requested, there wasn't a planning permit requested. It was unclear what was actually wanted from us as candidates, but that's an aside. I agree with David that the site is old and poorly utilised and urgently needs funds and urgently needs to be a priority for the hospital. First and foremost, the hospital must be the priority, and the site can and should be better used overall. What we do with the rest of the site, I can't really imagine a situation where it's fair for me to stand here and pledge taxpayer money to the development of a private school when so many local public schools are struggling to heat and cool their classrooms in portables. So that's really quite simple. If there is a situation where that's not coming out of the tax pocket, that's a different discussion, but because there was no further information in the request, it's really not to comment beyond that. But to echo what David said, the first and ultimate priority must be the hospital and use of public access to the site.
The school, the hospital, Madeline Gunn.
Well, it was Erev Chag, and I responded as soon as I got the email. I said, thank you, but it's an optimistic timeline. I'm not going to get back to you in time. Well, let's set up a meeting and talk. So I met with David Gold and Amy Hershen, had a really interesting discussion about what the plans are for the site and what Scopus actually wants, which wasn't included in the letter. I echo what David says and what Rachel says. It has to remain a hospital, and it has to be a world-class hospital, especially localised hospital for Caulfield prime land. But having spoken to Scopus, what they ultimately wanted, and perhaps it wasn't worded as clearly as it could have been in the letter to us, is they wanted a commitment to look at redeveloping the site, and they don't want to remove the hospital. So I gave them a commitment to look at redeveloping the site, as long as the hospital remains there. That doesn't mean the site goes to Scopus, and they clarified they want an open process. They're the only ones so far that have shown interest in the site. They would buy it at market value if it goes to an open process, and that's what they want. They've done extensive consultation with the community, 200 community groups that they've consulted with from the local area and the surrounds. So I support it remaining a hospital and an open process to see how to redevelop the rest of the site benefit of the people of Caulfield, but the most important thing is that the people of Caulfield have direct input into what happens into this prime land in the middle of our electorate.
Nomi, I've got a question for you. And I'll start a bit with a personal anecdote here. A few weeks ago, I was driving my daughter to school, and full disclosure, my daughter attends Lior College within the Caulfield electorate, but I myself don't live in Caulfield, so none of you have to suck up to me. And I was listening to you being interviewed on the ABC, and you were speaking a lot about being a local representative, about there being a voice for the local community. You used the word local over and over. And I was driving my daughter, as I said, to school. Now, Lior College has been on the front page of The Age for funding shortfalls, essentially because some parents after COVID might be in difficulties and they haven't been paying contributions. We were looking at our kids missing out on things like school performances, excursions and so on, sporting competitions, everything that makes school basically worthwhile for kids. You talk about being a local voice, yet the kind of issues that are the top billing issues for you are very worthy. They're women and climate and integrity. But state government is a very bread and butter affair. People want service delivery. And I know you've said a little bit about Caulfield Hospital, but really you talk a lot about local, but yet how local really is your pitch? Or are you really kind of pitching to people in the community who are perhaps wealthy and those services aren't that important for them?
So let me start by saying that I had a brother who went to Lior College, and I agree with you, it's an underfunded school, and the fact that we have in this electorate underfunded state schools is a disgrace. I've gone to visit many of the state schools in the local area, Caulfield Primary School, South Caulfield Primary School. They don't have school halls for their kids. They have to decide on Monday morning, depending on the heat or the rain, when they're going to have an assembly. They have rotting window beams and no funding to fix them. Gaffer tape holds it together. That's a disgrace. In our electorate, we should be doing better to serve the local people. I think it's important when you say you're a local member, because people want to feel like you understand the local issues. Major parties take electorates for granted. We saw in 2019 the Labor Party parachuted someone who voted in favour of BDS motions to be our upper house member because out of a little stability deal, that was the next seat that became available. So the emphasis on local is, I know this community. I live here, I've always lived here, I've experienced the local schools. I wouldn't agree with the characterisation that I only care about the wealthy. Heck, I'm 30. How wealthy can you be when you grow up in Caulfield? Who my age owns houses? Who can afford to send their kids to Jewish schools? Who can afford to send them, go on holidays anymore? You grow up as a millennial and you're promised the world, and all of a sudden the world you're inheriting is much worse. So I'm focused on the local issues, on healthcare, on schools, on climate action, on integrity, but they weave into local issues through the base in which you're bringing.
Lior, I've got a question for you next. Over the past nearly 25 years, Labor has been in power the entire time except for 4 of them. Yeah. So there's really no one else to blame, is there, for the chronic underfunding and mismanagement in our health system, which was so painfully revealed during COVID and beyond. Now you're saying to fix it. Now you're talking about astronomical sums to fix it, the ambulance waiting times, the emergency department overcrowding, the elective surgery waiting lists that keep ballooning. But after this sorry record, why shouldn't we give the other side a go?
Thanks for the question, Julie. I'm going to draw inspiration for my answer from a Liberal leader. A Liberal leader who occasionally, when he gives an answer, puts people ahead of politics. Don Perrottet, Premier of New South Wales, stood at a press conference with Dan Andrews, and presumably much to the chagrin of Matthew Guy. And let's talk about Matthew Guy tonight, because he seems to be the one who can't be named. Answered a question and noted that the Victorian health system, in addition to the health systems of most states of Australia, and in fact most countries around the world, have suffered significantly on account of the global pandemic. And he stood there and he acknowledged that whilst there was more to do, both in New South Wales and in Victoria for our healthcare system, we were doing pretty well, and I think it's important to remember that context. Now, we've got a number of healthcare initiatives. We're putting monies into hospitals, we've got 10,000 places for nurses, we're implementing all of the recommendations of the ESTA report in terms of ambulances. Why shouldn't you trust the other mob to fix it? Look at their record. Hospital closures. They just pledged $8 billion to regional healthcare, but within a couple of days rounded back to $4 billion because they hadn't done the sums right. David himself, to his absolute credit, stood up and sat down when we were at Shirachasha and said, yeah, the Liberal Party have a brand issue when it comes to public healthcare. So that's why you shouldn't trust the other mob. Yes, we need a bit more investment into our healthcare system, and we will give it. But we have to acknowledge the reality that it's been a pretty rough couple of years for healthcare systems all over the world.
I'm going to break things up a bit with a question from the audience. This is a question from Richard Fuller. And he asks, the state's response to the coronavirus demonstrated its unconstrained powers to restrict personal freedoms and diverse views. Okay? Who can forget the kind of police, barging in and arresting a pregnant woman for a Facebook post? Do you support any legislative changes as a result of what we've seen these past two years? Start with you again, Lior.
Look, we've been through a lot, and it was an unprecedented time, not just for Victoria, but for Australia and also for the entire planet. I'm not going to sit here and say that everything was done perfectly. Mistakes were made, and they were acknowledged. We've learned from those mistakes. I think that the legislative balance right now is about right. We're going to focus on health advice, we're going to focus on protecting citizens, and we're going to focus on better disclosure to constituents.
I think most people realise just how powerful the state parliament is during the coronavirus, and especially a government with 55 out of 88 seats, a massive majority. Any piece of legislation that Dan Andrews wanted to pass, Dan Andrews got through. Without scientific backing for some things, have little children closing playgrounds, outdoors, restricting people to their homes 1 hour a day. It was unprecedented times, but it was unprecedented power, and we saw what happens. But we also saw what happens when you have a hapless opposition. For 2 years, we didn't have our holiday services. The people of Ripon Lee, don't forget the horseback police that came Erev Chag to police their synagogues. It's unpleasant. Where was the opposition? And do you want a government with a massive majority to push through anything? So my pitch is, you want a strong crossbench. You want that every piece of legislation goes through, there is a fresh set of eyes that is going to be looking at it and saying, I represent the people of Caulfield. Is this in the interest of the people of Caulfield? What amendments should be added? What oversight is there? You've seen what a massive majority does in a hapless opposition. Don't trust it.
Do you want to, Rachel, do you want to something?
Thank you. Look, it was a hard time for everyone, but it was an unprecedented time. There were hundreds of millions of people dying all over the world, and I think our response in that time had to reflect the urgency and severity of the situation. And I don't really think it's particularly productive for us to judge what the government was doing in that extreme situation and extrapolate to what it does in normal times. It did, however, as Nomi pointed out, really highlight to people, particularly who were previously disengaged from politics, how powerful state governments are, which was previously, pretty under the radar tier of government. You love to yell at your local councils because they didn't pick up your bins, and you love to yell at the federal government because they tax you too much. The state government, no one really gives a shit. But this highlighted to us how important they are, and that is an important thing that came from the virus. And I agree, there is an incredible way of centralising power in the Labour Party that, while I appreciate that they listen to science and they listen to health experts, I think it is worrying the way they can centralise power. It's a really important point that we raised. Let's just move on. I mean, it's done, it's behind us, we survived.
David, should we just move on?
No, I'm quite seriously, no. We will never know the damage that one person caused to this state. The mental health damage, the anxiety, the stress, the business closures, the longest lockdowns in the world with the worst results. Now, Lior mentioned before about New South Wales. Have a look at what New South Wales were able to achieve compared to us. You don't have to go overseas, look across the border and see what Daniel Andrews did in ruining the state, ruining the mental health and anxiety of people. And Nomi can say in terms of where were the opposition. I can tell you, every single night during those lockdowns, I was dealing with the stress and the anxiety of every single one of our local constituents that were dealing with confused rules, rules where you could have a UFC fight and go to that, but you couldn't actually go and see and bury a loved one. The stuff that was dealt through by one man drunk on power is unacceptable. Parliament should make those laws, not one individual. We desperately need a change, and we're also committed to a Royal Commission to understand what went on during that period, the deaths, the hotel quarantine, all of those mistakes, to make sure we never, ever have to go through that type of thing again.
I think that there are certainly a lot of Victorians who would agree with you, David, but you do appear to have a lot of supporters here tonight in this room, and I'm not sure it's entirely representative of views out there. But can I just say that you're running very hard on the crisis in our health system. You're betting the house on it, in fact. You've even kind of pulled the pin on the suburban railway to invest in hospitals. Yet, at times, during our lockdowns, and I suppose no one's saying that there was not cause to legitimately criticise the Andrews government. I have, certainly in my columns. But at times, you really did seek to actively undermine, or at least people could allegedly try to actively undermine public confidence in the government's pandemic measures. Now, your party has I'm not out for applause, I'm just asking questions. Your party has the campaign slogan, "Remember this November," right? It's cryptic, but it appears to be a pitch for the anti-Dan, anti-lockdown vote. Primarily, I think, in Melbourne's western suburbs. You're getting about having a fake ambulance. There's been a few issues about that, right? Okay. How do you respond to what some people would say, which is that, given your track record over the last 2 years, the coalition has a serious credibility problem on health?
Julie, I actually disagree with you. I think that absolutely we have all the credibility on health. One of the things that we all mentioned before in terms of where we are and where our focus is of the Liberal Party, we have said categorically categorically that we are going to take money from a link, loop, whatever you want to call it, and put every single dollar into the health system. Because if you can't get a hospital bed, if you can't call 000 without someone there to the other line, you can't get an ambulance. We've had people die. People having to take their child themselves to hospital, a 14-year-old, and die in a mum's arms because they couldn't get through on 000. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you live. It is unacceptable in this state. Now, we all will have you believe that it's all happened in the last 2 years during the pandemic. I'm sorry, Lior, I don't buy it. Daniel Andrews has been the health minister or premier for 12 or 16 years. We do not see the same kind of things happen anywhere else. I make no apologies with the fact that we are investing in our health system because we need to. Lior mentioned 10,000 healthcare workers. We're committed to 40,000 healthcare workers. We've committed to 20 hospitals. We've committed to fixing the system, including 000. We've got to do it. The one thing that needs to happen is our health system needs to be there and needs to be responsive when people need it. I make no apologies for that. You mentioned about the ambulance. Well, yes, we use an ambulance because at the end of the day, it is another example where Daniel Andrews promised 4,000 beds, emergency beds, on April 1st, 2020. Where were they? Was it an April Fool's Day joke? I'm not sure. I think the biggest joke is on Daniel Andrews because we're still waiting for those beds. We're waiting for the health system to fix. I make no apologies for that. That is the number one thing that we will do should we win on the 26th of November.
Thank you. You mentioned, Julie, the Liberals having a credibility problem. You know how we know the Liberals have got a credibility problem? The Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party doesn't have the word Liberal on his call list.
Okay, can I just stop you there?
The Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party doesn't mention Matthew Guy or forming government, doesn't even challenge me when I say that in all probability Labor will form a majority government. The Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party is aware that the values and visions of the Liberal Party don't resonate with this electorate, and that is why he is hiding from the Liberal Party.
I'm going to stop you there. David, he went on there a bit, but it is true that I was driving around the electorate today and I saw the Caulfields out, and they were very rightly commending your engagement with the community. Didn't really see, I don't think I saw a Liberal logo. That's right, isn't it? What's going on? Isn't it true that in certain parts of Melbourne and Victoria, your brand is toxic?
Well, I would hope people know who I am and what party I stand for by now. Caulfield has a sea of blue. I'm a proud Liberal, and I'm very, very proud of where I've taken the party as a deputy. I have every confidence that Matt Guy will make a fantastic leader, a fantastic premier. We're running a community campaign. We're running a grassroots campaign. We are all focused about locals and their issues, and that's pretty much what my posters say. I don't hide from who I am. You know, we're out and proud every day. I will make one point though, in terms of Lior was able to have a bit of a go. Let me respond by this. Lior, never take the voters for granted. It is the voters that determine who's going to win on election day. If you determine already that you've got in the bag and that Daniel Andrews will be the premier in 26th of November and you're going to be incumbent, that might be very well, but I would say to you, leave it to the voters to decide. There's a few weeks to go and we're not giving up yet.
There is such a thing called hubris, and we have seen it from the Labor Party before.
I think it is fair enough, and I'm not certainly taking this election for granted, and we've got 4 wonderfully qualified and talented people on this stage. Look, I think we've laboured the point enough. But again, David is running a local community campaign focused on himself. he's moderated his positions, he's presenting himself as a newfound moderate. And I think it's because he realises that the toxicity of the Liberal brand is hurting him.
Okay, you don't get another go.
No worries. Happy to move on.
Okay, a co-host of tonight's debate is the Jewish Climate Network. And this question comes from there. Over the last 3 months, the Coalition has announced some ambitious climate policies. They've made historic new climate commitments just last month. So basically, every major party and independent now seems to be taking climate seriously. So what we want to know is, very, very briefly, what differentiates your offering from those of the other candidates? I'm going to ask you to be concise, and we'll go through. Rachel, starting with you.
Well, what differentiates us, myself as a Greens, is I guess that a lot of the policy we're seeing adopted across the other parties and candidates was original Greens policy. So originator would be one distinction. Look, our plan is quite simple. It's to move to 100% renewables of coal and gas by 2030. A job guarantee for all coal workers. It's doable, it's fully costed. Most other countries have done it, even other states. Tasmania and ACT are 100% renewables. If they can do it, we can do it. The plan's there, the science is there, the strategy is there. It's very simple. I've got a plan, they've got a plan, everyone's got a plan. The difference is we've got political will to do it.
I'm really proud to be able to take the Liberal Party where we are on this, and I wanted to thank the Jewish Climate Network for helping us arrive where we're at. 1 million homes on batteries and solar, because at the end of the day, the transition onto renewables is going to take time, and we need to ensure that people have the power in their hands to keep the lights on. And so we want to ensure that people have batteries and solar. An emphasis on $1 billion towards hydrogen, because green hydrogen is going to be a key part of powering things on into the future. Community batteries to be able to ensure that our sporting clubs and others are also supported. But I think back to your key point, we've got legislative targets, not aspirational ones, and that is in lockstep with New South Wales, because I think it needs certainty to get people to invest in the market. We're not going to take back the energy market and give it to public state enterprises. It didn't work before, we're not going to do it now, we're going to let the market decide. And finally, and the most important thing, all of our plan in terms of the transition into energy of the future will be underpinned by gas, because you can't go to zero overnight. You need to ensure that we get affordability and reliability as part of the plan, and we need that gas once you get coal out of the market to ensure you're able to have the certainty to keep the lights on. Cost of living is an important thing that is hurting everybody right now when it comes to energy. We're going to have a sensible transition, and that's what we will be doing as part of the Liberal Party. And I'm really excited about transitioning to the future, but ensuring that we have our sensible plans to get there.
I think it's great that climate action is now platformed by every major party. I think there was a big lesson learned in the federal election in May, that not incorporating that in a platform is not a winner. I think there's no reason why Caulfield can't be one of the leaders in renewables. We're sitting in the Glenara Town Hall. Glenara has an incredible plan. The council wants to fund stormwater drains and water recycling. They want to be able to plan for LED lighting in the local area, and they're just waiting for government to come and fund it. If we want to have people involved in renewable technologies, the government has to stimulate the economy in this area and has to offer subsidies. We have the electric vehicle tax in Victoria. It's a bummer. It's a disincentive to people who actually want to take up these new and emerging technologies. So you have to pause the tax, but then you also have to build the infrastructure. Yeah, we should have electric charging vehicles across this electorate so everybody knows where they can charge their car. It should be fashionable to be someone who has solar on your rooftop. There's 14 schemes right now where you can apply for solar. When I door knock, it's not easily understood by people how to transition over to renewables. So make it clear, streamline it, fund the projects, and encourage the locals to take it up, because we can be at the forefront of this renewables revolution, or we can be left behind, and I think we know where we want to be.
Look, I think it's wonderful and it's a great thing for Caulfield that, on the stage, we're represented by, 4 candidates who, broadly speaking, are all in favour of climate action. I want to acknowledge the role that Jewish Climate Network, a co-host of this debate, in really raising awareness and the passion that the young people in general have for climate action is to be commended. I was lucky to take with Joel Lazar to meet the Environment Minister. And look, the Labor Party in Victoria
Lior, I just have to, you have to get to the point here.
has a history of having very
What
active.
differentiates your offering from the others?
Firstly, I represent a party that has a history of implementing world-leading climate change action. Secondly, I represent a party where everyone believes in the science of climate change. And thirdly, I represent a party that has emission reduction targets that are way ahead of many other states and many other countries, and we've got the political will to carry out more initiatives.
I might come back to the subject of energy in a little while, but for now, I've got a question for you, Rachel. Another co-host of this event is the Australian Union of Jewish Students. And I know they're very concerned about safety of students, of Jewish students, on campuses. In August, so long before this week's Israeli elections, the Melbourne University Student Union passed a motion calling for an academic boycott of Israel, accusing Israel of apartheid and ethnic cleansing, and expressing support for Palestinians' rights to engage in self-defence against their occupiers. What's your response to that motion?
Well, I'm a Melbourne Union organised, so I spent 5 years there and always felt uncomfortable around the union. In fact, it was my main reason for not joining. It's a tense environment, sometimes not a very productive environment. Look, as a party, we do not endorse BDS, but we're also not in a position to tell an independent union or body what they can or cannot endorse. I don't support the move, but I'm not someone that's going to tell them what to do. I don't think anyone can. They're their own body with their own voting members. There's that. However, it is a real concern, the rise of anti-Semitism on university campuses around Victoria. And in general, but particularly in universities, seem to be a hotbed for it. This is why Sarah and the Greens leader led an investigation into the rise of the far right and racism in Victoria. And put simply, while I can't tell a student union what they can or can't do, I can legislate stricter and stronger anti-racism and anti-vilification laws and tackle the issue at a systemic level, which is where it needs to be tackled
Understand, Rachel, but we're talking in this instance not necessarily of far-right anti-Semitism, but of far-left anti-Zionism or anti-Israel sentiment that can be described, or people do describe, as anti-Semitic. I guess, where do you stand as someone from the Greens, where we know that there are a variety of views, and some of them might lean towards the anti-Israel end of the spectrum?
Oh, well, I'm not anti-Israel, I'm an anti-Zionist, and under the Greens we don't support BDS, we support a pro-two-state solution, as does Labor, as does many other independent candidates. So we don't endorse, certainly we don't endorse what the union has done, but we just respect the rights of the union to endorse what they want to endorse. But I agree that anti-Semitism certainly doesn't exist exclusively in the far right. There are factions of the left that have it, and it is disappointing, but it is just the reality of having many people participating in political discourse, and stronger anti-racism and stronger anti-nullification laws apply across the board, whether it's coming from the left, the right, or the centre, it doesn't matter. The laws apply equally, and we need more of them.
Can I just ask, I'll let you go, if you guys want to speak on that, that's fine. Lior, can I just ask you, to your knowledge, how did the ALP-affiliated students vote that motion?
I couldn't tell you, Joel. I couldn't tell you because, I'm not aware. But what I can tell you is that the first time I met the Premier of Victoria, the first words he said to me were, I know what's happened at Melbourne University, and I'm looking what we can do about it. I think this is a government that's adopted the IRA definition. We're committed to getting as many universities as we can to take up that definition. I think anti-Semitism, obviously, in all forms, is heinous, and we will work. Obviously, I've spoken about the Jewish security grant, but we are working to protect the community. I acknowledge David's role in being part of what was a bipartisan push to ban the swastika. I think that's helpful. I think there's more we can be doing, and there's more we should be doing, and we will do.
Not sure, Natalie, if you want to say something at this point. No. Rachel, could you just address that issue of the IRA definition?
Yes, certainly. Look,
which I understand the Greens do not endorse.
We don't have an official position on IRA. We're a pretty, multifaceted party, and opinions differ. And if you join us as the Jane Greens, you can be assured of a very spirited, robust debate around IRA. But the reality is that definitions don't stop racism. They never have, and they never will. If someone's walking down Carlisle Street and wanting to, say something anti-Semitic, they're not going to pause and think, wait a minute, we've adopted that IRA, I'm not going to say this. So that's the reality. I'm much more interested in, real outcomes and real actionable things we can be doing to ensure safety of the diaspora here. And I don't have a position on IRA, and the party doesn't have an official position. It depends who you talk to.
Okay. Nomi and David, if you want to make remarks, please keep them very concise. I'd like to move on.
I think that IRA is an amazing definition, and it's helpful for understanding where anti-Semitism or criticism of Israel crosses into that line of anti-Semitism. Does anyone know in this room, though, how many convictions in the last 20 years we've had in Victoria under the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act and the vilification? Does anyone know?
2.
One single conviction. And I think that tells you when there are student motions being passed in universities, when you have a parliament that's adopted the IRA definition, that the legislation isn't working. You need to strengthen the protection around vilification. You need to make sure that the Jewish students who are in universities, which are obviously federal, but at a state level we have protections for them. If we strengthen the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act, we have the ability to have legislative options for students that are going to continue to bear the brunt of this anti-Semitic rhetoric as anti-Israel positions continue to become mainstreamed and platformed by mainstream organisations.
So starting with Lior, it was Labor students that voted in support of that motion, and that's appalling. And I think that the starting point for the Premier would be to actually talk to many of those students and get them on board in unison with the IRA definition that the Premier has adopted, and I welcome the Premier adopting that definition. Nomi mentioned that IRA has not resulted in any action. Well, IRA's only been adopted literally in the last few months, so we've got to allow that definition to do its work. I think what we could be doing a lot better is give the students on campus that support by extending that definition that we led the way in Victoria, that the Premier followed. Let's get our university campuses to also have an IRA definition that they can adopt, that people can understand, that we can educate students what right is and what is wrong, and to protect our students finally on campus from anti-Semitism and from hate.
question for Nomi. This is from Peter Horowitz. If a majority government is formed at the state election, isn't it true you will have little or no influence? So isn't a vote for you a wasted vote?
Oh, you hear this a lot from people who are sceptical about independence, but I think that if you look at the federal parliament, you've seen that lots of these independents have been able to push their policy agenda to become adopted by the mainstream. A federal IBAC, it originates with Helen Haynes, she's an independent. Looking at emissions and the climate change bill, Szego, Cedar Moringa. So when it comes down to it, in Victoria we currently have 2 independents who are sitting in the Victorian Parliament. You have Susanna Sheed for the seat of Shepparton and you have Ali Kappa for the seat of Mildura. Both of those seats are extremely loyal to major parties for a long time. And you have to look at the seat of Shepparton to see that 4 years as an independent, pushing for the interests of the people living there means a $1.5 billion investment, a hospital for the first time ever for Shepparton. Mildura has the best services that they have ever had. My boss is the people of Caulfield. People tell me, you're fearless, you're outspoken. And I say to them, wouldn't I be a great MP? I'm going to represent you, I'm going to be outspoken for the people of Caulfield, and I'm going to do a damn good job of advocating for you.
Let's move on to planning and housing affordability. I think it's a big issue in Caulfield, especially for young people who want to be able to stay in the area. And no one wants low quality housing developments, but we all want more housing. David, on your website you pledged to revamp planning protections to preserve local character. You say that the community has had over 5,000 new dwellings built in soaring high-rise towers and unsustainable high-density blocks. Can you tell us which blocks and towers you're referring to?
Well, you only need to wander down to Australasian or around Caulfield Racecourse to see a lot of that development or overdevelopment. The issue around housing affordability will not be solved by the huge amount of investment properties that are being, if you like, consumed into those areas. Now, we've had more than our fair share of development in our area. We talk about environment and what that does in terms of the implications of this overdevelopment. So we've got to get the balance right. We've got 70% of development going into places like Glen Ira. What we've got to do is we've got to ensure that we get the spread right. We've got to be able to open up other areas, growth areas to provide land, accessibility. And that doesn't mean that we're asking people that live in Caulfield to go and live somewhere else. But we can't have the pressure in terms of the amount of density and investment properties that are being built that is doing nothing for housing affordability. We've got to be able to build more housing. The other thing that I'm really keen on doing is to ensure we've got money for first home buyers, particularly to get young people into the market. It's really important to be able to provide that. We'll have something more to say about that in the next few weeks. But getting young people into a house is really important, into the housing market. But also, we've got to get the protections in place in our area, because at the moment, we're squeezing people all into a very, very dense area, and it's not doing any benefit when it comes to livability. I can tell you one of the key things that people talk to me each and every day is livability in our area. We've got to get the balance right, and that's why we need to have, and that's why we've said we want to get mandated height limits in different parts of our areas, so you don't get the soaring towers, 14, 16 stories, that is doing nothing for the housing affordability market in Caulfield.